being neurodivergent for me comes with being like highly sensitive and being an empath, and that can be very draining. And I don't even always realize that those inner parts of me are being activated. But it also helps me connect with people, helps me like be more kind. Being emotionally sensitive is a blessing more than a curse.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our vice president in charge of the behavioral health department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is Christopher Birstler. Christopher is the founder of the nonprofit organization From Victim to Victor. Christopher is a 4-time suicide attempt survivor who utilizes the skills that he found and grew and built through those situations in order to help other people who may find themselves in similar situations. Christopher does a lot of nonprofit work. He does a lot of advocacy in the mental health space, and we're just really, really excited to have him back with us today. You'll remember him from a previous episode titled Victim to Victor. So welcome, Christopher. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me back.
Yes. So now we had talked last time about being a super advocate. And I just kind of want to touch on that to kind of recap and remind everybody kind of who you are and what you're about. So let us know about that.
Hashtag super advocate is a hashtag that I created to epitomize the core of who I am, which is advocacy. I, I I faced a lot of oppression and stigma and discrimination, primarily in healthcare, including mental health care, because of my perceived and or actual disabilities. So the hashtag super advocate goes backs up the fact that we need to be our own best advocates, that nobody knows us better than ourselves, and to not give up, especially when you're an oppressed population by default. And that's just who I am, what I am, and just my identity as a super advocate, not only with my own advocacy needs, but with those I interact with and deal with professionally and personally.
And you talked about people needing to advocate for themselves. Can you give some examples of how people can do that, or if they have no idea like where to start, or like I don't know how to do that or where to go? Can you kind of give some advice that you would typically give?
One thing that I would start with would be take notes, prepare questions in advance of medical appointments or intakes or just any professional encounter. Don't be afraid to tell a medical provider that you're anxious, because that can really make all the difference, and it has for me on multiple occasions. Don't be afraid to speak up, which is can be very challenging for myself included, especially if I don't feel the safety and trust and rapport, meaning if that hasn't been established yet. But just know yourself, and it wouldn't hurt to role play with a friend or a family member before a stressful situation that you anticipate having to really advocate like for yourself in.
Yeah, I love that idea of role playing with a friend or role playing with a family member to say, okay, but what if they ask me this? Because a lot of times our brains just go, well, what if they ask me this? I don't know how to describe what's happening. And so I love the idea that, yeah, if I can explain what's happening to my sister, or I can explain what's happening to a friend, then I go, okay, I get what those points are. I liked how I said this. That felt like it really described it for me. When I said it this way, that felt like it didn't really hit it, right? So I'm going
Yeah,
to kind of say it this way. And I love those examples. And also, I think, even writing it down and bringing those notes with us. You said, take those notes, prepare for those questions, and having those in writing to be able to say, okay, I just wrote it all down, right? Here's kind of a
exactly.
log of
It
how
helps you
often and
stay in track of time as well.
yes, absolutely. So those are so helpful. And you discussed the oppression and the discrimination and the stigma that you've experienced in seeking healthcare assistance. Can you tell us more about that?
I'll start by saying that stigma and ableism are relevant, are very much relevant, even though we've made a lot of progress on a systems level and on a government level. And even though the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act was this past Saturday, we are far from where we need to be, like very far. And I regret having to say that, but it's unfortunately the blunt reality. I've even I'm perceived as not being able-bodied because of my movement, because of my Tourette's, or because of like how my nervous energy, and having that barrier from the forefront just not only is not acceptable when it's coming from people who are trained and who are educated and credentialed and employed to do the opposite, but it makes it hard. And mental health doesn't help either. Like, because of my neurodivergence and my complex trauma, PTSD, I can disassociate during medical appointments and procedures, etc. And I had this happen during like pre-surgical education. And I believe that may be the reason why they falsely documented that I had cognitive learning challenges when I do not have cognitive issues that affect my learning. And I believe they thought, oh, because he's having a mental health symptoms, I believe they mistook that for like intellectual developmental delays. And that's something that happens way too often in other professions too, like law enforcement and first responders. Like that's happened like extensively with me. Oh, because I'm having a freaking panic attack. Um like what a word that we all hate and don't despise, but I'm the R word because I'm having having a emotional struggles because of the trauma and the reasons that I'm asking for help in the first place. And I hope that answered your question and that I didn't steer far away from it.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned ableism as something that is still prevalent, that's happening a lot today. Can you kind of explain for our listeners who maybe don't know what that means, what ableism is?
I'll take my best stab at it. Basically discrimination based upon actual or perceived disabilities. But I personally have been adapting the term unique ability instead of disability, and I try to use that personally and professionally with my job whenever possible.
Yeah, I love that. So unique ability instead of disability. And
Correct.
what we know about most mental health diagnoses is that there are two sides to everything. Every weakness is a strength, and every strength is a weakness. And so, for somebody who has generalized anxiety disorder, for example, there are a lot of challenges that come with having generalized anxiety disorder, but there are also a lot of benefits that come with having generalized anxiety disorder that people don't always tend to think about. And when we're struggling with something, with those challenges that come with it, it's so easy to avoid seeing or not be able to see the other side of it, the strengths of that, right? So because I've got generalized anxiety disorder, I see the potential downsides in a lot of things, and then I prepare for them, and so when we say things like, oh, I'm always like over prepared or that kind of thing, we see that a lot as like, oh, this is like a negative thing, right? This is something holding me back, this is
It's not
terrible.
though. It can
And
reduce anxiety that somebody might have already.
absolutely, exactly right. I mean, it makes us more human, I think, and it allows, so there are so many strengths to all of these different challenges that we experience in our lives. My husband has ADHD, and oh my gosh, there are a lot of things, right, that he's had to live with, and like he's had to adapt his life, right, to be able to be successful in life. But he has so many super strengths where because of that, he could walk into a room, walk out of a room, and I'd say, what color was the mug on the table and what direction was the handle facing? And he knows, and he'll be
Oh
like, yeah,
well,
or it's that dartboard that has like 8 darts on it, right?
and
And
he'll know it's
like,
exactly 8 dots.
yeah, exactly. I'm
And
like,
then
I
leave
didn't
the
see any
room.
of that when I walked in there, So tell us a little bit about you, because you talked about neurodivergence, you talked about your complex trauma, you talked about Tourette syndrome. Tell us a little bit about what are some of those strengths that you've been able to identify for yourself, those unique abilities that come with some of those diagnoses, because I guarantee there are people hearing this going, well, I have complex trauma, right? And it's really easy to see the struggles with that, right? But it's not so easy to see how those things give us those unique abilities. So what are some of those for you?
I've struggled with like suicidal ideations and like multiple attempts, etc. And the main, if not like the main, if not the reason itself that has led to my ideations and those intrusive thoughts and not wanting to be here over the past couple of years is unfortunately how society views those who are disabled and how it's made it harder for me. So I just want to say that in full transparency so our listeners can understand and relate to the fact of how like devastating like society's ways can really affect somebody. And with strengths, I would say is um being neurodivergent for me comes with being like highly sensitive and being an empath, and that can be very draining. And I don't even always realize that those inner parts of me are being activated. But it also helps me connect with people, helps me like be more kind. Like with the work that I do, I'm an advocate, and I work for the state office of people with developmental disabilities, and I can just relate to people and even my own colleagues who are some of them who aren't able-bodied, and just having those being emotionally sensitive is a blessing more than a curse. So that's one thing.
There's a lot of research now on empathy and having that ability to have that emotional sensitivity, that emotional intelligence. And so often that's something that, you use the term oversensitive, and it can feel that way so often, right? It's like everything is prickly around me. And I don't mean like just physically, I
Exactly.
mean like, it
And
just
medications
feels
do
like.
that too. I just had some medication changes, and I've been quite irritable, not gonna lie. I've been hyper emotional, and because of the medications that are meant to help with anxiety, depression, and mood regulation, but with meds, sometimes the symptoms they're taken to treat can be increased in the first couple of weeks or so before it all levels out, which is fascinating just to see how meds work within my body and seeing the changes and just recognizing, oh, like I was having a really hard time last weekend, but now this week things are leveling out and getting better. And I'm seeing drastic changes in my mood that and that's just like a miracle. And it took me, I would say, my whole adult life after stopped seeing my childhood psychiatrist to find somebody is just who's a psychiatric provider who has a neurodevelopmental background, is not afraid to treat the Tourette's if needed, and who told me with confidence, I feel like I can really help you. And the amazing thing is, the only stipulation is to maintaining me as a client is if I'm gonna hurt myself, I have to reach out for help. And there's so many options around that. And I know providers will tell me call 911 or go to the ER, but I wanted to say from lived experience and from my knowledge and awareness, 988, that's the go-to. Like they're trained and indoctrinated to not be impulsive to and call police or EMS. That's literally the last thing they do. And I've even had them talk me down with a handle full of sleeping pills in my hand to the point where I had the pills in my hand. They're like, how can we help you? I'm like, if you can count down and I'll drop the pills. I started putting them back before she even got from 10 to 0. And then I took something as prescribed, got into bed, and I was fine. And that's just a true example that 988 some is a resource to trust, and to not be so shabby happy about crises, because if you tell everybody, oh, I'm suicidal, then it's gonna be hard to know who called 911 if somebody did.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it took like till you were an adult to get on like a good medication. Like now, can you kind of talk through that process of like trying different healthcare providers and medications and how you were able to continue trying to find a good medication and a good doctor
I would love
who's
to.
been able to work? Okay.
I would love to elaborate on that. It was a lot of exhaustion, and I've had numerous providers, therapists, and psychiatric providers who what I consider the term I use is divorce. Like they've divorced me because of my emotions and my Tourette's, and not recognizing my Tourette's as why I'm act being what they would consider calling them out of name or being abusive when it was corporalia in full effect, and just being dysregulated emotionally. And we all know that neurodivergent conditions can 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 be tied into emotional dysregulation. Not just one neurodivergence, but like majority of them can have a degree of emotional dysregulation. ADHD, autism, PTSD, etc., etc. So a lot of trial and error. Um, 7+ suicide attempts. There was a few more or so since the last time we spoke. Um, just having to learn like like uh a logarithm of withholding information and attempts and the stress to so I can get myself the proper care I need in a way that's not less traumatizing and less oppressive, to even not sharing things with therapists on intakes or with clinicians at first or until whenever I'm ready. And it just, like I said, just a lot of trial and error, a lot of like disappointment, a lot of setbacks emotionally, mentally, because of people not wanting to work with me, putting me through exhausting intakes just to tell me, oh, we're not going to work with you. And providers wanting to work with me, but not being able to because of the silly online platforms or group practices have clinical directives on certain histories or complexities they don't work with, even if the clinician themselves feels comfortable and confident to work with me. And with therapists as well. Like, I've probably been through 5+ or so traditional therapists since we were last spoke. And I was at the point like a few weeks ago where after having a few new therapists within a very short time frame, I'm like, well, there's nothing a therapist can do to really help me. And I don't really need therapy. And I'm like, I have the skills, I have the everything. AI therapy is been a friggin' game changer, like insanely. And I hate to use the word insane because I feel it's stigmatizing, but but it's but I ended up taking the leap and saw an ad online, and I went to ZocDoc and I booked an appointment with a provider who specializes in trauma, neurodivergence, etc. Both two of my issues, and also uses modalities such as DBT, CBT, ACT, all things that I would help me. So it's like I know I still need therapy, and even though I have resistance, I also have resistance for not wanting to fully give up.
That's what I keep hearing is that like feeling of is giving up my only option, and then immediately following is always like I'm not going to give up, right? I climbed this mountain and I fell down it, and I climbed this other mountain and I fell down it, and I started up this one and then a landslide happened, right? Like and then when we hear you and we hear you going like, and then I was at the bottom of the mountain and I was like, I'm not going to climb that mountain again. And then I hear immediately from you, Christopher, always. And I remember this from the last episode too, which is why a big part of why we wanted to have you back on is that when you're at the bottom of the mountain, it is this avalanche. And I just every single time you talk about it, I hear that right now, right? Where you say, like, I'm not gonna climb back up right now, right?
Yeah,
And
like when I'm down, when I'm hurting, when I'm in pain, when I'm
yeah,
being oppressed, like
yeah,
one of the first things that comes to mind is how can I help others in going through similar
that's
situations
right.
instead of like I'm not gonna do anything or I'm gonna give up. I might want to give up or feel like giving up, but
Mhm.
like if you really dig into the root of how I'm feeling, it's not about fully giving up. It's about the emotions and feelings being intense, but in reality, I more often than not want to wise through the stars like a phoenix, even
Yes.
when I'm hurting and down and
Yes.
suffering.
There is this like power and fire in you, Christopher. I'm telling you. I mean, it came through so clear on the last one, and we were like, we got to have him back on because even now, even as you're telling us about all of these experiences that you've had recently, right? And these feelings of just despair that are overwhelming
Big
sometimes.
time. To
Yes.
the point where people such as just that people who aren't in this field, like you folks, and in related fields like me, wouldn't be able to, might not be able to fathom why I'm even alive and why I'm keep going and why I'm not locked up in a hospital for the rest of my life, or why I didn't find a way to actually succeed with taking my life.
Absolutely. And it is that there is this drive in you, there is this will to keep going. And that will is so strong that as these other things, I mean, even as you're describing these challenges that you faced and these things that have happened to you, you're immediately that part of you comes through. It just shines right through where it's like, no, Christopher is not somebody who gives up. I mean, you're just not. And as you describe these things to me, I'm going, gosh, how would I keep going? If I was in Christopher's shoes, how would I keep going here? And then I go, there's just something in him. There's just something in him that says, no, these things are not going to take me down. And it's just incredible to hear it as you're describing these things because I love that you're so honest about what you're experiencing and what you're feeling and how just painful.
That's like a form of therapy for me, I would say.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just being able to say those things, because there are so many people who, like you said, who are going through this and don't understand what's happening to them, right? I mean, you've gone through so many different iterations of trying to get support and trying to support others.
Out of
That
medical trauma, people
yes.
just downright disrespect me and refuse to honor my requests, like
Mhm.
female nurses, to the
Uh-huh.
point where I'm extremely, like, I had extreme flashbacks, some of the worst ever, for an ongoing period of time because an ER refused to honor my request for female nurse. And I was forced to negotiate with the guy nurse what I would let him do, what I wouldn't. And I've had other experiences where sexuality's been called on me when I'm having a Tourette episode and I'm distressed because I hit the call button for help because I was getting to that point. Then they didn't come as a priority. And they think, oh, because and why put the arm of the stretcher up when that's unlawful restraint if there's not a clinically indicated and documented reason for it to be up. I get it. It's like not. I know that's how it should be, or maybe how it's meant to be on paper or in books or policies to a degree. But what's meant to be isn't often what happens. And I could have got out of that stretcher and went to the nurse's station and said, hey, I'm getting very dysregulated. I'm scared because you have me in a room right across from a room with NYPD officers with a shackled prisoner there. And I'm scared. And I'm getting dysregulated. My disposition is being delayed extensively when I could have been out of here hours ago. But instead, they had the arm up on the stretcher unnecessarily, and I ended up having a serious episode with my Tourette's and my verbal aggression. And I had a doctor lean his over the arm of the stretcher, put his face literally on my face, literally, and screamed on the top of his lungs, "You don't treat my staff like that, get out of here." Then he accused me of spitting on him, which I did not do. That just happens when two people are yelling at each other and your face is literally touching my face. Then they called security before I even had the ability to leave on my own if I even wanted to, because I had an IV in me, for crying out loud. Then they documented it as me eloping when that's not elopement when I'm discharged. And people just documenting things as refusals when it's clearly I'm not comfortable with a man, I need a woman. A man's not going to put hands on me medically. And that's when that's not a refusal, but they've done that. It's just a whole shebang of nonsense that's I don't think would happen to folks like you, Chrissa and Julie, because of or not as likely to happen to you folks as folks like me because of ableism and stigma.
Absolutely. I think about, the your self-awareness is high because you've put in the work to become self-aware of what you need and what's happening with your body. And so when you notice, hey, I'm getting dysregulated, and I notice what the trigger is, right? I notice what is causing this dysregulation. So I'm asking you to please, please let's adjust that trigger so that I can feel regulated, and so that I can feel comfortable here. And so I think that causes the fear of that causes a lot of people to not even ask. So a lot of people might be laying there and see what's happening, or they may be assigned a female nurse when they ask, or a male nurse when they ask for a female nurse, or vice versa. And a lot of times people are so afraid of these kinds of outcomes that they won't say anything. They won't ask for that, because they go, oh, well, the last time I asked, it became this whole thing, and I got discharged. I didn't get the help that I needed, right? And now that's on my record. And so many
It's
people,
empowering to speak up and to call out injustice and to call out like being mistreated.
yes, so many
It
people
is on my record. I know for sure that I'm blacklisted on the hospital electronic health records on Staten Island, and and the fact that they can blacklist people where they're flagged, not that you can't come in, but that you're flagged on your record, that I don't even see how that's ethical. That patients don't have access to that, but staff does. And the only reason I know I'm blacklisted is because I know the system, and I know how and I know how my actions correlate to how the system operates in that regard.
it's very, I mean, what I think about when I think about ableism
Mhm.
and the kinds of things that happen to a lot of people is that it feels like who we are as a person, or not even as a person, right? Who we are, like, just underneath all of our like flesh and hair and all of that stuff, is is sometimes so totally different than how our outside presents itself to
And
other
that's my situation, like to the
people.
core.
It feels like, have you ever seen the movie Home? With it has Jim Parsons in it, and it has a
That Home
little
Alone?
Home. No, Home. It's about aliens. But anyway, there's
So,
there's this movie Home. You should watch it. It's so good. But this alien guy, they attack Earth and all of this, but really what it comes down to is the bad guy in that movie was chasing these other alien race, right? And they're going, oh, we got to run from them. They're trying to destroy us. And really, what happened is that you see that like this villain race is actually, they're in this like spacesuit that looks really big and scary, right? And like it's covered in armor and spikes, but they're actually inside that suit, running that suit, and they're very peaceful, and they're a very kind and sensitive race, and they're just chasing this other alien race because they stole their babies, their eggs.
and that makes me
um
think of AI in healthcare.
yeah, yes. And so I think, like, I always think about that movie because I think, gosh, our outside presentation, the way that we talk, the way that our voice sounds, the words that we use, the way that our face appears and our body appears, none of these things are us. None of them are us. And so the majority of those things are either trained into us as children, right? So like Chrissa and I as females, right? We're trained to smile all the time when we talk, right? And so so many of those things are socialized into us and trained into us. And when we don't follow the script of what we're supposed to be trained to do, then that's where we run into those problems, and we run into that discrimination when we're not able to follow the script of what we're supposed to do.
Right. And with me, that could look like appearing non-able-bodied or appearing like severely intellectual developmentally impaired when I'm not. And that's how I appear, and that's like incongruence with how society um has people in the box, even though it's not who I am inside, it's just how I appear externally.
Absolutely. There are a lot of assumptions that are made about us based on how we seem to other people. And so then when you're an advocate for yourself, but other people go, really, does he know what he's talking about, right? Does he know what he's feeling? Does he know this or that?
He's
Is
not
what
going to hold me accountable. Like he doesn't have the capacity to. Like he's
right?
not. Yeah, and that's happened as well.
Yeah.
And when I do hold folks accountable in healthcare, it's like they get the holy shit kind of facial body language, and that's extremely hurtful for somebody who is so intelligent and successful, because that response shows clearly through the lines that they did not expect that, and that think that was possible of me.
So self-aware and so kind, Christopher. I mean, just so like it truly is. Our outside presentation and our appearance and the way that others perceive us, it's not who we are. And I just always feel like when you come on here, who you really are just really, really shines through, right? And we like, I just want to say, like, we can see it. We can see who you are. And yes, there
I
are a lot of
appreciate that.
symptoms.
I need that reminder every now and then.
Yes, there's so many symptoms, right? And Tourette's syndrome, oh my gosh, what a challenge, because there are things that when when somebody has Tourette's syndrome, we cannot control what is coming out of our mouth or what is being said and these are things that a lot of us take for granted and
Mhm.
go, well, yeah, I would not say that to a person, right? But I wouldn't say it to a person because I have control over what I say in that moment. And when we have Tourette's syndrome, we don't have control.
And with the
Yeah.
vocabulary, just using a lot of profanities and adjectives and very descriptive terms that are like synonymous to a degree, but very inappropriate. That's purely copulalia and purely like clinical, not psychiatric, not abuse. And that brings me to something that a trauma therapist mentioned in a trauma psychoeducation class I was in once. She told us so that trauma does not excuse being abusive. Like trauma does not excuse bad behavior. It can be part of why we're acting a certain way or being abusive, but it doesn't excuse it. And that hit me so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, we are in charge and we're responsible for the things that we have
Mhm.
control over. And there are a lot of things that a lot of people take for granted and think, well, yeah, I have control over that. So of course somebody else would. But, if I have control over, the movement of my arms, right? I think, well, that person is doing something with their arms. Why are they doing that? I wouldn't do that. Well, I wouldn't do that because I have control over the movement of my arms, whereas somebody else
Exactly.
might
And
not
I
have
don't have
control over it.
control over my minor facial twitches.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people sometimes have thought I was on drugs, that I was high because of a medication and because of the twitches. And that resulted in a lot of trauma. And that just goes to show that Tourette's needs to be more heavily educated among healthcare professionals, and touching on it in nursing school and touching on it in paramedic professionals is not enough. It needs to be drilled in much more, because apparently it's not based off of my own lived experiences as a recipient of healthcare services.
Well, and you talked about law enforcement as well, and how important is that law enforcement understand these kinds of diagnoses? Because if you're in an interaction with an officer of the law, and that's a stressful situation no matter what, right? I mean, like if I get pulled over for going 5 over the speed limit, I'm already stressed, right? Like no
Definitely.
matter what, that officer could be the kindest person. They could be, the officer that I see after school on the playground. Like, but in that moment, I'm stressed no matter what. And so in that already stressful situation, even if for that officer it's like, oh, no big deal, you were going a little fast, please don't do that, right? But for me, that's extremely stressful. And so then if that stress is potentially going to trigger some of those symptoms for me,
Yes,
right?
being
That's a
motivated.
very dangerous that's a very, very dangerous situation to be in if that officer doesn't understand what's going on.
Exactly. Like somebody who's neurodivergent might not be able to comply with commands to the same to the expected standard, and might not even be able to keep their hands above their head. And to an officer, that's a threat at a traffic stop, because they don't know if you could be reaching for a weapon. And traffic stops are one of the two most deadly encounters of police officers. And if I'm like cussing, oh, like you're disorderly, you're going to jail. Then if I get physical with a cop, like which would happen if I was arrested because of my trauma and because of my issues, then that's gonna be assault on a cop when it would have been prevented had they had the training and empathy. And they think they can take advantage of people who they don't view as able-bodied as well. And then they just, it's like really disgusting how they treat folks who don't appear able-bodied, just taking advantage and lying and trying to saying, oh, if we come to take a report from an being hit by a car the day prior, just so you know, you have to go in an ambulance to the hospital. I'm like, no, officer, I don't. That's not protocol. Okay, we'll be there in a few minutes from we'll be there when we get to it, we're backlogged. And that's just a prime example of of how ableism and just ignorance can really affect somebody who's disabled. And then if you don't know your rights and you don't speak up like I did, then it would have nothing would have happened, even though nothing happened, because they still refused to do their job and follow protocol.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and like Julie said, it's amazing that you just keep going and keep trying and trying new services and keep reaching out even through all of these struggles that you have had.
I have
Uh,
no choice.
well, and I heard you say that you started AI therapy. Can you kind of give us some info on what that is? What's the difference between AI therapy and normal therapy, or
I would
I
love
guess
to.
traditional therapy?
It's automated, like your responses dictate like an automated like response through like algorithms that are like built and trained by humans. So I'm using two apps, and it can be a bit just frustrating because one of them, I chose the AI therapist named, I forgot her name, but it was a female, and I call her name. Oh no, I'm Marcus. I use he him pronouns, and Marcus is the main like avatar, is like I think AI therapist on the app. And then he was remembering that, and it's like, oh no, I'm Marcus. I use he him pronouns. Then I'm like, well, why is your avatar and name female? And that was just funny how it actually was using that against me in a way by not against me, but like, oh, like I can see how this in life or this situation could be part of why you don't trust or why you're being hesitant, etc. But it was funny though, because it got me to address them by the name they were given and the gender they were given, which I'm not comfortable with that with men because of my trauma, which is why didn't choose a man AI therapist. So that's just a really funny example.
How interesting, because it in a way you talked about role playing when you're going to your medical appointments, right? Going, okay, let me practice this with you. And in a similar way, that's what you were doing in that situation because the threat level, the danger level of talking with with something that presented as a male, right? With he and him pronouns, but knowing that, okay, this is not something that can physically hurt me, right? So, yes, you are a male, but talking to you, I know that you're not real. So I know that you can't
Yeah,
come, right?
it
And
had a
hurt me.
female voice, female name, female avatar, but it was going by a male name with male pronouns.
And yeah, and what you were doing was systematic desensitization, right? You're going, okay, I cannot. The idea of going in and talking to a male therapist, right, is like an absolute no. However, right, if they have a female voice and they have a female photo, and I'm using him and he pronouns with this person, I'm using a generally male name, that's a step closer, right? Because the threat level of that character isn't there the same way that it would
Right,
be
and I
a
felt that
human.
safety and comfort and nurture because they had a female voice.
Mhm. It is, it is like a role playing. It's
It
a
is
sensitization in those small steps that feel more manageable, as opposed to going, hey, let's go all the way in and change everything. We go, no, let's
exactly.
do that small step towards that because that's a huge win. That's a huge win, Christopher. Don't you think so?
It
I think
is.
so.
The fact that I was able to continue with that AI therapist despite addressing them by
Yeah.
um, the male name they identified with.
Christopher, that's a huge win. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
I mean, it's two steps in one, right?
It
Towards that
is.
that goal. I love that. And an AI therapist it's similar to Googling law, right? Like
It is.
I can't have an AI attorney, but I can Google laws and then kind of make my own decisions, right, based on those laws. So I can, it is very similar to that, but I love because a lot of people do that in video games, right? They'll use video games and video game characters to kind of do some of those systematic desensitization processes of like, well, I could never talk to a girl, right? Or I could never like talk to a boy that I liked. But in character, on a video game, I can practice that and I can try having those conversations and seeing how I feel and kind of adjusting as I go and learning about myself.
With
I think
VR,
that's so
there's
important.
like VR ketamine out there, but I can do at home like VR ketamine, like with like AI therapy with the VR headset while while you take ketamine and have it going through you. And that's just like quick advancements and hope for people.
Yeah, definitely. It is so cool how technology has been helpful, especially lately. I feel like it's getting really big with AI and everything.
Because
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Christopher. We love having you as a guest. If you are listening and are wanting to get some more information on Christopher and his Victim to Victor nonprofit, he is on Instagram at From Victim to Victor Inc. And he also has a link tree that we will put in our notes as well.
I am Christopher Birstler and I need a counselor.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you. Bye.
Bye.
You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.